In 1932, America was in freefall. Banks had shuttered their doors, unemployment had climbed past 20%, and families across this country were being asked to do something almost unimaginable: survive on nearly nothing. In tenement kitchens and dust-caked farmhouses alike, dinner wasn't a decision. It was a desperate daily question. What can we boil into something edible tonight? And the answer, almost always, was soup. Not the kind ladled into bowls at restaurants. Not the kind warmed on a Sunday afternoon out of comfort or nostalgia. This was survival soup, made from bones, from weeds pulled out of cracked earth, from stale bread that hadn't quite turned yet, from the water that rice had cooked in. It was imagination in a pot. It was love expressed through scarcity. Today, we're counting down 25 forgotten Depression-era soups that once quietly kept American families alive through the hardest years of modern history, and stay with us until the very end, because the final soup on this list reveals something about resilience and the human spirit that changes how you see the word waste forever. We begin with number 25, water and onion soup. Just onions, just salted water, slow cooked until the bitterness gave way to something almost sweet, something almost hopeful. Your grandmother knew this without ever reading a cookbook, that patience could transform the most humble ingredient into something that felt like a meal. Number 24 was potato skin soup. Families saved their potato peels all week long, storing them carefully, knowing nothing could be thrown away. Children who grew up eating it simply thought it was normal soup, and in a way, it was. It was the most honest soup imaginable. Number 23 takes us outside into the fields and front yards of Depression-era America. Dandelion green soup. Children were sent out with small baskets to forage what most people today spray with chemicals and curse. The real genius was that free food was growing everywhere, if you were humble enough to pick it. Number 22. Chicken foot broth. Every single part of the animal went into the pot. Chicken feet, slow simmered for hours, released a deep, gelatin-rich broth that grandparents swore was good for your bones. We lost something when we decided that only certain cuts of an animal were worth cooking. Here is where things get personal. Number 21 was milk and cracker soup. Warm milk poured over crumbled stale crackers, sometimes sweetened with a pinch of sugar. It was bedtime supper for children in countless American homes. Simple, soft, and deeply comforting in a way that no restaurant dish has quite managed to replicate since. Number 20 was tomato bread soup. Canned tomatoes mixed with torn stale bread until it thickened into something almost stew-like. Grandmothers tore that bread by hand, never with a knife, always by hand, saying, "Don't waste a crumb." And get this, that same humble bowl is now served in upscale Italian restaurants under the name Papa al Pomodoro and celebrated as gourmet cuisine. Translation: what poverty forced onto the table, abundance eventually put on a pedestal. Number 19 was cornmeal dumpling soup. Cheap cornmeal dumplings dropped into thin broth, watched carefully by children who knew that the moment those dumplings floated, dinner was finally ready. Number 18 was vegetable scrap soup. Onion ends, carrot tops, potato nubs, all boiled together in what some families affectionately called garbage soup. The pot was never fully empty. It just kept evolving, day after day. Number 17, bean and bone soup. Dried navy beans and a leftover bone, simmered low and slow all day long until the marrow had given everything it had to give. Families called it Sunday soup, and it lasted through the whole week. The smell of it simmering filled entire homes with something that felt, despite everything, like abundance. Here is where it gets truly insightful. Most people look at this list and see recipes, but these weren't recipes. They were systems of survival built on a single, radical idea. Nothing gets wasted. Not a bone. Not a peel. Not the water that rice cooked in. Every scrap carried meaning because every scrap represented tomorrow's meal. And the most quietly remarkable truth: many families living through the Depression didn't think of themselves as poor. They thought of themselves as adaptable, resourceful. There's a profound difference between those two things. Your great-grandfather knew this without ever using the word sustainability. That mindset is returning today, slowly, quietly, through zero-waste cooking movements, homesteading communities, and a growing cultural hunger to reconnect with something real. If you're finding these stories as moving as we do, consider subscribing to Lost American Memories. We're just getting started. Now, a question for you in the comments. If you had to survive for 1 week on what you usually throw away, do you think you could? Number 16 was coffee bread soup. Hot coffee poured directly over stale bread, sweetened or salted, depending on the region and the family. Workers drank it before dawn, standing in small kitchens, fueling themselves for long days of hard labor. It sounds strange to modern ears, but it was breakfast, dinner, and quiet dignity all in one bowl. Number 15. Rice water soup. The starchy water left behind after cooking rice, lightly seasoned and served, especially to sick family members as gentle nourishment. Even cooking water wasn't wasted. Number 14 was oatmeal soup, savory oats cooked in broth instead of water, thick and filling on cold mornings when the world outside offered very little warmth. Number 13, turnip and root soup. Winter root vegetables boiled down until they surrendered every bit of their earthy sweetness. It stuck to your ribs, as the saying went. Number 12 was salt pork and bean soup, preserved salt pork and dried beans, the combination that kept more American families alive through cold winters than perhaps any other single meal in this nation's history. And number 11, apple peel soup. The leavings from apple pies and preserves, boiled into a lightly sweet, faintly fragrant broth. Children helped peel the apples, and they understood, young as they were, that nothing would go unused. Number 10 was mulligan stew, perhaps the most communal soup on this entire list. Unemployed men gathered around open fires, each contributing whatever scraps they'd managed to find that day. It was community distilled into a single pot, the understanding that survival, at its most honest, is a collective effort. We lost something when we stopped cooking together out of shared necessity. Number 9, egg drop depression soup. One egg, sometimes just one, beaten and stirred into a full pot of boiling water or thin broth, stretched to feed an entire family. The symbol of it is almost too much to sit with. One egg, one family, one shared meal. Number 8 was cabbage water soup, and here's where it gets truly poignant. The sharp smell of boiling cabbage lingered in tiny apartments and small farmhouse kitchens for hours. Decades later, grown children could recall that smell instantly, not with disgust, but with a complicated, tender grief. The smell of hard times. The smell of someone who loved you doing the best they possibly could. Number 7. Flour dumpling broth. Plain flour and water, shaped by hand, and dropped into thin broth, expanding as they cooked until even a nearly empty pot felt like a full meal. Number 6 was peanut butter soup. Broth thickened with peanut butter, calorie-dense and surprisingly rich. Children found it almost fancy. The real genius was that a single jar of peanut butter could stretch nourishment across days. Across every single one of these soups, one truth keeps quietly repeating. Depression-era kitchens were not built on choice. They were built on necessity. And necessity, it turns out, is one of the most creative forces in human history. A potato peel wasn't trash. It was tomorrow's survival. A bone wasn't waste. It was flavor, nourishment, and a small act of hope. Your grandmother knew this without being taught it. She lived it in the clatter of pots, in the smell of wood smoke, in the long, quiet hours of slow simmering broth. Did we lose wisdom when we gained convenience? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and if this journey into forgotten America is moving you the way it moves us, a like and a subscription means more to this community than you know. Number 5, chicken neck soup. Neck bones boiled for hours, yielding a deep, impossibly rich broth from the most overlooked part of the bird. Number 4, root vegetable survival soup. Whatever the cellar held at the end of winter, all of it going into a single, thick, earthy pot. Number 3 was a variation of the communal mulligan pot. Neighbors pooling their last scraps together, understanding instinctively that shared hunger was more bearable than lonely hunger. Number 2, empty cupboard soup. No fixed recipe, no measurements. Whatever remained, a limp onion, a heel of bread, a bone with almost nothing left on it, transformed by water and patience and love into something that could be called, with a straight face, dinner. And number one, the soup that represents everything. They called it nothing soup, literally water, salt, and whatever small hope a family could hold on to that tomorrow might be slightly better than today. Families looked at that thin, trembling bowl and called it still dinner, because it was, because it had to be. These 25 forgotten soups tell a story far larger than food. They tell the story of ordinary American families who refused, quietly, stubbornly, day after day, to give up. Every bowl represents an act of love performed under unimaginable pressure. Every thin broth stretched by imagination represents a kind of dignity that no amount of abundance has fully replaced. The echoes of those kitchens are still with us. You can hear them in zero-waste cooking communities, in homesteading movements, in every impulse to save a bone, or use a peel, or turn what's left into something nourishing and whole. Because here's the simplest, most enduring truth of all. What we call poverty cooking today was once just called living. And living, it turns out, takes more creativity and more love than we often give it credit for. If this journey into America's forgotten past stirred something in you, subscribe to Lost American Memories and never forget the quiet wisdom hidden inside the simplest meals.